Well, I have to be honest with you, I was somewhat rattled by what I was seeing in some of the models regarding both the stratosphere and perhaps to an extent even the Mann-Julian oscillation. And I was even starting to say to myself with some of the model output, are we starting to turn towards a more east-based El Nino pattern and, the end game to the 2023-24 winter? Thanks for clicking on to the Tuesday edition of Hogan's European Outlook. Hope everybody is safe and well wherever you are. There is reason to still remain hopeful if you are a lover of all things winter weather. And the February forecast is a bullish one. It was projected to be the coldest of the 3 winter months, with December being the mildest, January being slightly below average, and perhaps a below average February, with the potential of a significant period of cold, something stronger than what we had seen back last week. And that, of course, was the coldest spell of the winter thus far. We continue to monitor the temperature anomaly chart for the month of January. This is the 2 meter temperatures for the month to date, so through the 23rd of January. Still below average across the UK and Ireland, but how much warmth do we see through the final week or so of January will determine where this month winds up. The projection was slightly below average temperature anomaly and also a below average rainfall. Now, I have to be honest with you, it could go the other way for both precipitation and the temperature. I'm not going to deny that. And I always try to be as honest as possible without showing a particular bias with regards to a forecast or just kind of wish cast in a certain type of weather pattern. You do get that in all the channels, and I do try to pride myself in being as transparent and as honest as possible. So the stratosphere did reverse briefly with the mean zonal winds back last week, and we've seen the return of the westerly wind in the mean zonal wind pattern. Now, the models are kind of suggesting a bit of a ramp up in terms of the strength of the polar vortex and the consequential winds surrounding the polar vortex in the month of February. Now, the Mann-Julian oscillation has been something that I have been barking on about for some time now. Probably a little bit tired of me talking about it, but nonetheless, I think there has been a considerable level of merit when it comes to this indicator and using the Mann-Julian oscillation as a tool to determine the type of pattern that we would see. So a phase 7 and 8 would be convection over the central portion of the Pacific Ocean. What you don't want to see is strong convection over the maritime continent, and that's exactly what we have now. And the model for the upcoming 7 days indicates just that. Strong upward motion over Indonesia and Australia. That's firing up a jet extension off Siberia, off Eastern Asia, across the Pacific, and is driving Pacific air across North America. In turn, we're seeing a very strong jet stream across the Atlantic, and therefore we're seeing mild Atlantic air driving across the UK and Ireland. Also, notice here all the low heights within the Arctic. That is indicative of a firmly positive Arctic oscillation when you kind of congregate all the cold air over top of the pole. But watch what happens as we skip through. This is off the ECMWF weeklies. Watch the pattern changing as we move towards the day 7 through 14, and then even further on than that in the 10 to 14 beyond and towards the middle portion of February. That's what I'm trying to get at. You notice here that as we start to go towards the middle portion of February, we have got a complete flip around in the upper air pattern. Rather than having those deep negatives over Greenland, over the Arctic region, we're now back to seeing above average heights across the north here. And if you look at the latest run of the Arctic oscillation here, this is off the GFS ensemble, this really kind of caught my attention, if I'm being honest. But it's part of the forecast. It's exactly what I thought potentially what would happen as we move into the month of February. Now, how long this current spell of mild lasts remains to be seen. But look at this here. You can see how we are firmly positive at the moment. We go back close to neutral. There's a bit of a bounce here back towards firm positive. But at the end of the run, you notice here that there's a drop off back into negative territory, firm negative territory at that. And that is very interesting indeed. Now look at the North Atlantic oscillation, not quite into the negative territory, but it's heading back towards neutral once again. And I just think that's very interesting. And it's going with the ideas that I've had in the longer term. So the MJO has rotated through phases 4 and 5. No coincidence, exactly what was seen back in the middle portion of December when we had the mild spell. We had the return of the positive Arctic oscillation, North Atlantic oscillation. If we look at that, you can see exactly what took place the middle portion of December. This is no coincidence, folks. It's not rocket science. You don't have to be a meteorologist to understand that this is response of that MJO rotating through the very phases that we're in now. Look at it's almost a mirror image. Firm positive, firm positive. Mid-December, mid-January, we went down into the negative territory. The reason why is we went back into the colder phases of the MJO. It's rotated through phases 3, 4, and into 5. And exactly on cue, 20th, 19th, 20th of January, we went into firm territory. We're warming things back up again. Now, if you look at the latest run of the model, you can see here how the MJO, now there's question marks over this amplitude, this enhanced convection. How active is the MJO as it's trying to go back into the middle portion of the Pacific Ocean, phases 6 into phases 7. What does that actually mean? What does that correlate to? So if you look at this chart here, if I can get to the right chart, it'll help. Now, this is what you would expect with a phase 6. Now, we've got that blocking high pressure over the UK and Europe. And you look at what's expected to come over the next week or so, we are building heights from Iberia northwards into the UK and Ireland here. But the question mark is, do we get that convection within the tropics to move into the Central Pacific, which is a phase 7 into phase 8? And if you look at the phase 7 into 8, that correlates to northerly blocking and a negative North Atlantic oscillation and a blocking high over Greenland. And then if you look at the ECMWF weeklies, 10th through the 17th of February, we've got just that. So this is purely based on the MJO, and it's done it twice already, and I would expect it to do it a third time. Now, is it third time lucky when it comes to what is taking place within the polar stratosphere? That is going to be the key. If we don't get that propagation downwards with the expansion of the stratosphere, the contraction of the troposphere, and the response down into the 500 millibar pattern, we probably will get, at the very least, a cold spell, but not the cold spell that was anticipated back at the end of November when I released the winter forecast. So this is going to be the big test. I said it already about January, and I think it's played out perfectly, by the way, because I did say it would be a stronger cold spell than what we've seen back in early December, but I still think that the worst of winter was to come during the month of February. The anticipation was that the sudden stratospheric warming, if it was to occur, and it technically has, how much response that has remains to be seen, but it technically did occur, that sudden stratospheric warming, during the month of January. Do we see the response down into the 500 millibar pattern in coinciding with the MJO trying to rotate back into phases 7 and 8? If we do, it's off to the races, I think, and we could have the potential of a February 2021 outbreak if it was all to come together. But when you see things warming up over North America, over Europe, it's sometimes hard to comprehend a cold pattern coming back into place once again. It's easy to kind of throw in the towel and say winter's over. But I'm sure mid-December, many people out there were saying winter was over when it wasn't even started yet. So I just wanted to first and foremost look at that in a little bit more detail, and we'll see what goes on. I'll look at the stratosphere in a little bit more detail in the next wee while here, because I think that's going to get very interesting also. Storm Jocelyn is ramping up, and I want to finish off today's video by looking at that. Let's look at the pressure chart, and you can see the system now to the northwest of the British Isles here, squeezing the isobars. We've got some gusty winds. We are going to see the liveliest of winds during the overnight period tonight. Now, these are the current wind speeds in kilometers per hour. By the way, those winds yesterday, early yesterday morning, in conjunction with Storm Isha, was remarkable. Even down across the channel, we had obviously the 99-mile-per-hour wind in Northumberland, with a 86-mile-per-hour wind, I think it was, on the west coast of the Isle of Wight, with Needles Point, of course. And we had some very powerful winds transferring northwards right up through the country. There was a lot of damage actually caused by that system, and a very unusual swathe of wind damage from south coast all the way to the north coast, and even into the Northern Isles, Orkney and Shetland. You don't quite often see that taking place, but that was a 948 millibar low, and that was a very potent area of low pressure. I received damage here in the back garden. My folks received damage in the central belt, and I know there was damage all the way down to the south coast of the UK. Ireland, Northern Ireland received some significant damage as well. And Storm Jocelyn is just going to enhance that situation as we progress through the overnight period tonight. Now, temperatures are certainly quite mild out there with that west to southwesterly wind. We're actually seeing temperatures as high as 11.8 at Kinloss, 10 at Inverness, Dalcross, and even your kind of 12s and 13s through the central belt. And as you continue to progress down to the south coast, we've actually got quite a few 14s there. Don't know if there's a 15 anywhere, but very, very mild flow. And that system, Jocelyn, is dragging some very mild air all the way from the subtropical Atlantic here. So that is going to do a work, I think, on the temperature anomaly as we progress through the remainder of January. I think there's going to be ups and downs with regards to the overall temperature profile. Let's have a look at the GFS ensemble and see how much spread we actually have in the models beyond the final days of January here. You notice that big spread. You could argue that the majority of these runs, these are the 850 temperatures over Inverness, by the way. You can see really once you start to get to the 27th, it's all eyes on whether it's going warmer than average or colder than average. That red line is the average line. Let's have a look at London and see that the majority of the models actually go above average for London during the first couple of days of February, which is rather interesting stuff. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens as we move through the next couple of weeks here. Keep it right here on my YouTube channel. As I've said already, I'm getting ever closer to 6,000 subs. Be sure to hit that button if you haven't already done so and you're a lover of all things weather. I do try and show you the big, broad picture of weather and climate. Every Sunday afternoon, I do a global weather and climate report as well, which takes into consideration a look at the big, broad picture. But very interesting times to come. We've had so many named storms. It looks as if we are going to get a bit of a break after Storm Jocelyn, but it has been a very active period of time, really from the beginning of August. We've had named storms right the way through till now, and tonight is no different. It has been a tough time for folk. At least we've got slightly milder conditions, which will help us kind of turn down that heating a little bit over the next wee while anyway, and we'll see what February brings. But I hope you enjoy the rest of your evening. Stay tuned, like, share and subscribe, and I'll see you again tomorrow with more. Bye for now.